My name is Julian Cole. At 28, I should have been experiencing the proudest moment of my life. I was standing in a stadium packed with 12,000 people, the air thick with the scent of celebratory lilies and the roar of families cheering for the newest class of surgeons. I was the valedictorian. I had conquered one of the most brutal medical programs in the country. But as I sat there in my heavy doctoral robes, my blood ran cold. I looked down at the front row. There were 4 VIP seats reserved for my family. My father, Richard, my mother, Elaine, and my younger sister, Vanessa. All 4 were empty. My phone buzzed in my lap. It was a message from my mother, sent via high-speed Wi-Fi from a cruise ship in the Caribbean. Enjoy the day, Julian. We're at the swim-up bar with Vanessa celebrating her hitting 100K followers on her lifestyle vlog. Don't be dramatic about us not being there. You aren't a real surgeon yet anyway. You still have residency. A numb, familiar silence settled over me. For 28 years, I had been the background child. My father, a ruthless corporate strategist, viewed affection as a high-yield investment. If you didn't provide a social return, you didn't get his time. My mother lived for the social hierarchy of the Portland elite. And then there was Vanessa. Vanessa was the golden child. She didn't have a spark of discipline, but she had blonde hair, a curated smile, and the ability to make people look at her. In our house, visibility was the only currency that mattered. When Vanessa won 3rd place in a middle school talent show, my father rented out a 5-star restaurant. When I graduated valedictorian of my high school, my mother told me my speech was too intellectual and made her friends bored. I thought today would be more of the same. I would take my diploma, go home to an empty apartment, and continue being invisible. But then, the keynote speaker walked to the podium. Dr. Evelyn Carter, the most formidable pediatric surgeon in the world. She looked out at the cameras, then directly at me. She closed her prepared binder, leaned into the mic, and said my parents' full names to the entire live-streamed world. True wealth isn't found in a bank account or a follower count. It's found in the people who show up when the stage lights are the brightest. If you've ever been the invisible one in your family, drop a 1 in the comments. We see you. To understand how I ended up alone in that stadium, you have to understand the night my family officially traded my future for an illusion. It was the summer before medical school. I had been accepted into a top 5 program. I didn't need my parents to pay for it. I had earned scholarships. But I needed a co-signer for the remaining federal loans. It was a formality, a signature. I brought the folder to Sunday dinner. I remember the smell of roasted lamb and the way the light hit the mahogany table. My father was scrolling through his stocks. Vanessa was editing a photo of her salad. I slid the documents across the table. I need a co-signer for the final loan block, I said, my voice trembling with hope. This gets me into the theater. This makes me a surgeon. My father didn't even open the folder. He pushed it back toward me with one finger as if it were a soiled napkin. We can't take on that kind of financial liability, Julian, he said. It's too risky. You should look into a more affordable trade. I was stunned. Risk? I'm going to be a doctor, Dad. I'll pay it back myself. My mother sighed, swirling her Chardonnay. Don't be selfish, Julian. We've already committed our credit and liquid assets to Vanessa's new wellness brand. We're investing $50,000 in her launch next month. Building a brand requires real capital. Your schooling is just a personal hobby at this point. They were handing Vanessa $50,000 for a business that didn't exist, while refusing a signature for my life's work. I realized then that they didn't just want me to fail. They wanted me to stay small enough to remain in their shadow. I didn't argue. I picked up my folder, walked out, and signed for high-interest private loans that didn't require a co-signer. To survive, I took a job as an overnight EMT. For the next 2 years, I lived in a cycle of exhaustion. I would attend classes at 8 a.m., study until 8 p.m., and then work an ambulance shift from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. I was a ghost in a white coat, fueled by nothing but spite and black coffee. Some people will try to dim your light because it hurts their eyes. Never let someone who didn't help you build your throne tell you how to sit on it. Do you think Julian should have walked away sooner? By the winter of my 2nd year, I was a shell of a human being. I had lost 15 pounds, and the dark circles under my eyes looked like bruises. While my classmates were at ski resorts or networking at mixers, I was scraping blood off the floor of an ambulance. I was living on 4 hours of sleep, and the kind of adrenaline that eventually poisons your system. One night, around 4 a.m., My partner and I dropped off a critical trauma patient at the university's main teaching hospital. I was vibrating with fatigue. I had a massive pharmacology exam in 4 hours, and I knew if I sat down I might never get up. I found a quiet surgical break room, a place I definitely wasn't supposed to be, and collapsed into a chair with my textbook. I didn't mean to sleep. I just wanted to rest my eyes, but the next thing I knew, the room was silent and someone was standing over me. I jerked awake, panic flooding my chest. I expected a security guard or a dean ready to write me up. Instead, I looked up into the piercing, unblinking eyes of Dr. Evelyn Carter. She was a legend, the chief of pediatric surgery, the woman who had written the very textbook my head was currently resting on. Explain the mechanism of action for a beta-1 blocker in a pediatric patient with supraventricular tachycardia, she said. No greeting. No who are you. Just a test. My brain was foggy, but the survival instinct took over. I spoke for 3 minutes straight, detailing cellular pathways and receptor binding as if I were reciting a prayer. When I finished, the room was dead quiet. She didn't smile, but she looked at my worn EMT boots and then at my exhausted face. Why are you working an ambulance line at 4 a.m. if you're a top 10 student? Because I don't have a cosigner, I said, my voice cracking. And rent isn't free. She looked at me for a long beat, then checked her watch. My office. 3 p.m. today. Don't be late, and don't look like a zombie. Hard work in the dark prepares you for the light you haven't even seen yet. Sometimes your biggest break comes when you're at your absolute lowest. Have you ever had a Dr. Carter in your life who saw your potential when no one else did? That afternoon changed the trajectory of my life. I walked into Dr. Carter's office expecting a lecture on professional decorum. Instead, she offered me a lifeline. I've reviewed your clinical files, she said, leaning over a desk covered in research papers. You're a brilliant technician, Julian, but you're going to kill yourself before you ever touch a scalpel. I need a lead research assistant for my congenital heart defect study. It pays triple what your ambulance job does, and the hours revolve around your classes. She didn't wait for me to thank her. She just pushed a contract across the desk. Resign from the EMT position today. You belong in a lab, not a driver's seat. I walked out of that office and cried in the hallway. It wasn't just about the money. It was the fact that a complete stranger had seen my worth in 10 minutes, while my own parents hadn't seen it in 28 years. Over the next 2 years, Dr. Carter became my mentor, my protector, and eventually the mother I never had. She pushed me harder than anyone else, but she also made sure there was a sandwich on my desk when I forgot to eat. She taught me that surgery wasn't just about steady hands, it was about the heart behind them. As graduation approached, I felt a lingering, foolish hope. I was finishing at the top of my class. Surely this would be the moment my father finally looked at me with pride. I sent them the VIP tickets with a heartfelt letter. 10 days before the ceremony, my mother called. She sounded thrilled. Julian, we got the invitation. We're hosting a massive dinner at the country club this Saturday. It's mandatory. I flew home, my heart soaring. I bought a new dress. I imagined the toasts, the Dr. Julian Cole cake, the recognition. I walked into that country club ready to finally be part of the family. Instead, I walked into a room filled with silver balloons that spelled out 100,000. It wasn't for my graduation. It was a party for Vanessa reaching a follower milestone. My parents hadn't even mentioned my degree to the guests. I was just a seat filler at my sister's vanity project. The hardest truth to swallow is that you cannot bridge a gap with someone who doesn't want to cross the bridge. Julian walked into that room looking for love and found a mirror. What would you have done if you saw those 100K balloons? I have 3 parts left to complete the 7-part script. Should I continue with the graduation scandal and the final confrontation? I sat at that country club table like a ghost. I listened to my father toast to Vanessa's entrepreneurial spirit, and my mother talk about the 10-day luxury cruise they were taking on Thursday to celebrate. My graduation was Friday. You're leaving Thursday? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. You have the VIP tickets. You know I'm the valedictorian. My father didn't even look up from his steak. Don't be dramatic, Julian. It's just a ceremony. You'll get a piece of paper in the mail. Vanessa needs this vacation to reset her creative energy. We'll have a quick lunch when we get back. That was the moment the last string of hope snapped. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I stood up, thanked them for the meal, and walked out. I blocked their numbers before I even reached the parking lot. Fast forward to Friday. I sat in that stadium alone. The 4 seats beside me were like a gaping wound. Then, the keynote speaker was introduced. Dr. Evelyn Carter walked to the podium, looked at my empty row, and her face turned to stone. She abandoned her prepared speech and leaned into the microphone. I was going to talk about innovation, she told the 12,000 people watching. But instead, I want to talk about a student here who worked 40 hours a week on an ambulance while maintaining a perfect GPA because her parents refused to co-sign a loan. They called her a liability while spending $50,000 on her sister's social media hobby. The stadium went silent. That student is our valedictorian, Dr. Julian Cole. And while her family is currently on a cruise in the Bahamas because they couldn't find the time to be here, I want this stadium to show her who her real family is. 10,000 people stood up. The roar was deafening. It was the first time in my life I felt truly visible. Public silence ends where private truth begins. Dr. Carter didn't just give a speech. She gave Julian back her soul. Have you ever had someone stand up for you when you couldn't speak for yourself? Drop a heart if you believe in chosen family. The fallout was instantaneous. While my parents were sipping cocktails in the middle of the ocean, the clip of Dr. Carter's speech went viral. It hit LinkedIn, TikTok, and the local news. By the time I got back to my apartment, my phone was a graveyard of notifications. My father's corporate clients began tweeting. Is this the Richard Cole we do business with? Integrity matters. My mother's country club friends were in an uproar. The perfect Cole family image had been incinerated in 5 minutes of live-streamed truth. I didn't check the comments. I changed my last name to Hayes, my grandmother's maiden name, and moved across the country for my residency. I cut every tie. For 5 years, I built a new life. I became a specialist in pediatric cardiac surgery. I operated on hearts the size of walnuts. I was happy. I was free. Then, one rainy Tuesday, the intake pager went off. A neonatal emergency. A 3-day-old baby with a fatal heart defect was being flown in from Portland. The local surgeons wouldn't touch it. It was too complex. Only my team could do it. I opened the digital chart. Patient, baby girl Cole. Mother, Vanessa Cole. Grandparents, Richard and Elaine Cole. The air left the room. They were coming to me. They didn't know Dr. Hayes was the daughter they had discarded. They were desperate, and I was the only person on earth who could save their golden child's baby. Life has a funny way of bringing you back to the people you tried to leave behind. But this time, the power is in your hands. Do you think Julian should perform the surgery or hand the case to someone else? Tell me in the comments. I stood outside the consultation room for a full minute, the cold weight of my stethoscope against my chest. Through the glass, I saw them. My father looked older, his expensive suit rumpled. My mother was weeping, her social armor finally cracked. Vanessa looked small, clutching a hospital blanket, her eyes red from terror. They were no longer the untouchable Coles. They were just people waiting for a miracle. I pushed the door open. The silence that followed was deafening. My mother froze, her hand flying to her mouth as she recognized me. My father stood up, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Julian? Vanessa whispered, her voice breaking. You're the surgeon? I am Dr. Hayes, I said, my voice as steady as a mountain stream. I am the lead of pediatric cardiac surgery, and I am the only one in this building qualified to perform the arterial switch your daughter needs. My mother rushed forward, her face a mask of desperate hope. Oh, thank God! Julian, we're so sorry about the past. We'll make it up to you. Just save her. We need the best room, the best nurses. Tell them who we are. I looked her in the eyes, and for the first time, I felt no pain. Only a clinical, distant pity. You will get the same room and the same nurses as every other family in this ward, I said. In this building, you aren't VIPs. You're parents in crisis, and I am not your daughter tonight. I am a surgeon doing her job. My father tried to find his old voice, his face reddening. Now see here, Julian. No, I cut him off. You told me 5 years ago that I wasn't a real doctor. You told me I was a liability. Tonight, that liability is the only thing standing between your granddaughter and a grave. If you want me to save her, sit down and be quiet. For the first time in his life, My father sat down. The surgery lasted 9 hours. It was a delicate, rhythmic dance of steel and silk. I held that tiny heart in my hand, a heart that shared my DNA, and I repaired it with the precision I had earned in the dark hours of those ambulance shifts. When I finished, I didn't go to their waiting room. I sent my resident to give them the news that the baby was stable. I didn't need their thank you. I didn't need their apology. I had already given myself the only thing that mattered, the knowledge that I had become everything they said I couldn't be. I walked out of the hospital as the sun was rising, the air fresh and cold. I was Dr. Julian Hayes. I was whole. And I was finally, truly, free. Rabique. Success is the loudest apology you can ever give yourself. Julian didn't choose revenge. She chose excellence. And in doing so, she became untouchable. If this story moved you, subscribe for more turning points. Remember, your past is a chapter, not the whole book. I have one final part left: the confrontation and the operation. Should I wrap up the story,